Episode 1 of Raised by Wolves Season 2 begins with atheist soldiers finding Mother, Lamia, smothered under a thin layer of leaves. They contemplate what to do with her, eventually settling on moving her to their colony. Some time has passed since the first season, where the finale saw Mother wrestle with pregnancy and eventually give birth to a nightmarish flying eel. If you may also recall, this was hinted at being responsible for Mother's programming and computer virus woes. Anyway, Mother isn't the only one found, as Father too is brought to HQ. As the colonists begin to do an autopsy on Mother, they soon realize that the android isn't a service model and are quickly dealt with. Mother's objective here is to find her children. 3,000 miles from the tropical zone, we catch up with a freezing Marcus, who shivers by the rock outposts while snow swirls around him. After being attacked by a ship and thwarting the threat, Marcus hijacks the bomber and heads for the mothership, which is no longer in flight. Despite crash landing in the acidic water, Marcus manages to make it to safety and proceeds on foot. Marcus soon comes across a cave and proceeds in, dropping to his knees and clutching his necklace upon seeing the familiar sigil of the sun up on the wall. It's a sign from Sol, and interestingly, this spot is precisely where sunlight filters through a gap in the cave. Marcus ventures out and sets to work trying to convert atheists into believers of Sol. Strapped with explosive devices on their chests, Marcus manages to save both Decima and Vril from a nasty fate. He encourages them both to follow him, leading the pair away from the blast site, given one of their trio meets a rather sticky end just prior to this, exploding in front of them. Meanwhile, Mother and Father both join together and rejoice that their mission isn't a failure. They're soon joined by Campion, who greets them both. The rest of the kids are here too, although when they ask about number 7, Mother lies and claims it died. Father's confused look is an interesting tidbit to note. Father is apparently no longer angry toward Mother, especially if their chat soon after is anything to go by, but there are definite hostilities between them still. However, he decides not to rock the boat, with Mother promising to do her best to make it up to him. Alongside their children, Mother and Father soon get into the swing of things, embracing this new socialist community. Each day the colonists are given a new task, with Father and the kids given the same role, collecting food. For Mother, however, she's told to report to Tarantula and see Marcella. Her job is to teach the children of the community, going under her Lamia name. She shows up with a whole bunch of eggs, encouraging them all to paint. When one among them paints a snake, Mother interprets it as scary. Interestingly, she's challenged on this idea, with the boy claiming that all living things are beautiful. Meanwhile, Father's jovial mood is met with disdainful looks and nasty comments from some in the community. Father shrugs it off, given how bountiful this new world is. We've been less than an hour, and nearly filled out bags. But does find a cave opening that intrigues and unnerves him. There are scratch marks up the wall, and fractured remnants of what appears to be the skeletal remains of an android. Elsewhere, Marcus is determined to start anew. He intends to use his new companions to start a new order and convert every member of the colony, one at a time if need be. As the episode closes out, a flaming sigil of Sol is left outside Mother's house. The episode review. The world-building and atmosphere in Raised by Wolves has always been the standout component of this series, and the opening episode to Season 2 proves as much. There's a beautifully eerie tone hanging over large swathes of this, along with some excellent visual cues too. There's a really nice ebb and flow to this episode, swinging back and forth between Mother and the colony as well as Marcus and his new followers. Given how Season 1 ended, Season 2 does appear to be back on track again with a really strong chapter full of strong themes and thought-provoking ideas. The changed setting, with lush greens and beautiful rivers, is a bit of a far cry from the dusty desert of the first season, and it does help a lot to give this a new color palette and identity. With another episode released today, this certainly looks like a promising sign of things to come. Episode 2 of Raised by Wolves Season 2 starts with Mother's children debating over who left the sigil on the ground. Mother refuses to use violence though, shrugging off the suggestion of using guns and reinforcing that she's a peaceful android now. Mother's dedication to this cause is soon challenged by the colony. She's given a new task away from teaching the kids. Instead, she's granted the role of Punisher, complete with a menacing mask and metal suit to boot. She's given the unenviable task of hurting Tamerlane, who happens to be the culprit for leaving the soul symbol outside her house. It's something Mother's not particularly happy about, but does so with minimum fuss. Back home, Mother finds Father and admits to what she's done. However, Father is preoccupied himself, having found more pieces from the cave. As suspected, these happen to be fragments of an android and, according to Father, are also radioactive. Anyway, Mother decides to keep what she's done a secret from the kids, especially Campion, whom she's hoping will become a leader there in the future. A battered and bruised Tamerlane soon shows up at Mother's house that night, expressing an apology on behalf of the Trust. While Father is all smiles, claiming there's justice in the colony, Campion and the other kids exchange worried glances. Tamerlane's beating causes him to grow disillusioned with the colony, and following his beating, decides to join Marcus instead. A cheeky "come with us if you want to live" line is thrown in for good measure here. Seeing the swift justice brought against Tamerlane scares Campion so much he shows Mother the artifact Paul found out in the wilderness. He also shows an egg he found, but Mother encourages him to take it back to its mother. When Campion heads back to the tree, he's stalked by that strange eel Mother gave birth to. It's monstrously big, much larger than when we left it, and the two exchange a prolonged uncomfortable look. Mother does eventually show up, with her forcing the eel to leave. Mother's stomach begins to leak white liquid, the same place where the eel suckled on her originally. As the eel flies into the colony, it dives into the acidic ocean and with it, latches onto a military station and drags it into the water. With 9 casualties, one of which a child, and a very worried colony, the Trust brief everyone the following day. They've decided to launch a mass hunting trip to find the monster and kill it. But will Mother be able to do that, given the creature is technically her own child? We shall see. For now, she tasks Sue with sealing up her wounds and decides to go after the creature and kill it herself, armed with a monstrously large gun for company. Given her history, Mother deduces that she can do far more damage on her own away from the colony. Father, however, decides to use the Mithraic captives as bait in his own campaign. While this is going on, Marcus decides to sabotage the colony. Tamerlane offers himself up to disrupt the tank heading out, while Marcus joins him as they kill the soldiers inside. All except a guy called Santos, who Marcus tries to talk around. Unfortunately, he tries to shoot Marcus, leading him to think quickly and shoot first. Marcus isn't happy, wanting to convert, not kill these souls, but takes the time to praise Santos for soul as the soldier passes away. When Decima catches wind of what the soldiers were hunting, the monstrous biotech eel, she sees it as a sign and believes she needs to hunt this herself. Vril, meanwhile, is injured in the ensuing skirmish and runs into Campion, who agrees to take her home. As the episode closes out, Mother stumbles upon the shed skin of the eel and makes up her mind. This monstrous eel is a killer of children and as such, deserves death. She burns the skin and continues. The episode review. The second episode of Raised by Wolves starts to tighten the screw a little on the developing themes, with that distinct faith vs science discourse returning here. It's nicely sprinkled throughout the episode too, with the show doing well to show the faith of Mother and Father tested, while Marcus continues his crusade of recruiting followers of Soul. This sets up a nice dynamic for the episodes ahead, with the threat of the flying eel, adding an extra dimension of threat and an extra layer of depth in the form of motherhood. This links back to the first episode's question about how all living things deserve love, so why should this eel be any different? It's certainly an intriguing idea, and one I'm sure this show will explore more in the episodes to come. At the end of the episode, it appears that Mother has made her choice and decided to do what's right by the colony, but is that really what she believes? Quite how this will play out in the grand scheme of things, however, remains to be seen. The ending to the episode sets things up nicely for next week's follow-up, which is scheduled to drop with 1 episode at a time, rather than last season's continuous double bill.